All right, so life insurance. Not exactly the most exciting topic, right?
Yeah, not exactly dinner party
It's,
conversation.
but it's actually pretty fascinating when you dig a little deeper. I mean, at the end of the day, it's about protecting the people you care about financially, making sure they're okay no matter what,
We-
right?
Absolutely. We've been doing a lot of research on this lately, and there are some surprising things that pop up. Like, did you know there's this general guideline, this rule of thumb that says you need something like 10 to 12 times your yearly income in life insurance coverage?
Whoa, wait, really? 10 to 12 times? It seems like a lot.
It does sound like a lot, yeah.
Where does that number even come from?
Well, the idea is you're essentially trying to replace your income for a good chunk of time. And you also have to factor in things like, any debts you have, future expenses, even things like funeral costs. But like all those rules of thumb, it's just a starting point, really.
Okay, that makes more sense. I bet there are a lot of misconceptions out there about life insurance, though. Like, I used to think it was only for people with kids.
Yeah, that's a common one. But even if you don't have kids, there's still stuff to think about financially, I mean. What if something happens to you? Your mortgage, student loans, even just covering your final expenses.
Right, those things don't just disappear.
Exactly.
What about those people who say, oh, I'm covered at work? They think their employer's life insurance is enough.
Yeah, employer coverage is great, but it often doesn't provide as much as you might actually need. Plus, if you switch jobs, poof, it's gone.
Okay, wow. I'm realizing there's way more to this than I thought, so let's break it down. For someone starting from scratch, what is life insurance, really?
At its simplest, it's basically a contract between you, the policyholder, and the insurance company. You pay regular payments, which are called premiums, and the insurer, they promise to pay a lump sum when you die. That's called the death benefit, and it goes to the people you choose, your beneficiaries.
So it's like a safety net financially. You're making sure your loved ones are taken care of, even if something unexpected happens.
Exactly. It can help ease the burden financially during a really tough time.
I can see how that would be huge. So how does this whole thing work? Like, how do you even get life insurance?
Usually you start by filling out an application. You'll share information about your health, your lifestyle, your finances.
Mm-hmm.
Often there's a medical exam involved. The insurance company uses all that to figure out the risk, and then they set your premiums.
What if someone has health issues? Does that mean they can't get coverage?
Not at all. There are options like simplified issue policies or guaranteed issue policies, which are specifically designed for people with pre-existing conditions.
Oh, that's good to know. So you get approved, you start paying your premiums, and you're good.
Pretty much. Then, if something happens, your beneficiaries file a claim with the insurance company, and they get the death benefit. One thing to remember, though, is if you stop paying your premiums, the policy can lapse, meaning the coverage ends.
So got to keep up with those payments. Now, I know there are different types of life insurance out there. What are the most common ones?
The big three are term life, whole life, and universal life.
Okay, let's start with term life. What's the deal with that?
Term life is the most straightforward. It covers you for a set period of time, like 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. If you die within that time, your beneficiaries get the payout. If you outlive the term, though, the policy ends.
So it's like renting coverage for a specific amount of time. When would that type make sense?
Term life is usually the cheapest, so it's good for temporary needs. Maybe you want to cover your mortgage or make sure your family is protected while your kids are young. And once you don't need it anymore, it expires.
Makes sense. What about whole life then? How's that different?
Whole life, that's a type of permanent life insurance. As long as you keep paying those premiums, it covers you for, well, your whole life.
Ah, so it's like a lifetime guarantee.
You got it. And there's another benefit with whole life. It builds what's called cash value. It's kind of like a savings account that grows over time. You can even borrow against it or withdraw from it if you need to.
Wow, so it's like insurance and savings all in one.
Exactly. It gives you that lifelong protection plus potential financial benefits.
Why?
It is more expensive than term life, though.
Okay, so term life is more affordable, pretty straightforward. Whole life gives you lifelong coverage and that cash value thing. What about universal life? Where does that fit in?
Universal life is permanent too, but it gives you more flexibility. You can change your premium payments, even your death benefit over time, which can be helpful if, your life changes.
So you can customize it a bit more. Does it have that cash value thing too?
It does, but the growth potential is often tied to interest rates, sometimes even investment returns. So a little more complex than whole life.
Ah, so maybe a chance for higher returns, but also more risk involved.
You got it. There's actually another type, variable life, which is even more focused on investments. But we'll get into that later. For now, maybe we should bust some of those myths about life insurance. I bet you've heard a few yourself.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I'm sure I even believed some of them before we started all this research. So, lay it on us. What's the first myth to debunk?
All right, first one. Life insurance is only for people with dependents. Not true at all.
Right, we talked about that a bit. Even if you don't have kids, you've still got financial obligations. But what if you're single, no kids? What's the point then?
Think about it this way. Funeral expenses. What about any debts you have? Maybe you want to leave money to a charity or a loved one. These are all good reasons to consider life insurance.
It's not just about replacing your income then. It's about making sure those responsibilities are covered no matter what your family looks like.
Exactly. And another big one, a lot of people think their employer's life insurance is enough.
Yeah, I'm covered at work. We hear that all the time.
But the truth is, those plans often have limits. The coverage might only be, say, 1 or 2 times your salary, which might not be enough, especially if you have a mortgage or other big debts.
And you have to think about what happens if you leave your job, right?
You got it.
Yeah.
You could lose that coverage completely, and then you're scrambling to find a new policy, which might cost more.
So you got to double check what your employer offers. Don't just assume you're good to go.
Definitely do your homework. See if you need extra coverage.
Okay, what about this one? Life insurance is just too expensive. I feel like that's a big reason people don't even look into it.
It's a misconception, for sure. The permanent types, like whole life or universal, those can be pricier. But term life, that can be very affordable, especially if you're younger and healthy.
So it really depends on what you choose and, your situation, finding that balance, right?
Exactly. Coverage you need, but a price you can handle.
This has been super helpful. I feel like I'm learning a lot. So how does someone figure out how much life insurance they actually need?
That is a great question, and that's what we're going to dive into next.
Okay, so we've talked about the different kinds of life insurance, busted some myths, but how do you figure out how much coverage you need? That feels kind of tricky.
It does take some thinking, yeah. But it doesn't have to be super complicated. Remember that rule of thumb we mentioned? Aim for 10 to 12 times your income.
Right, 10 to 12 times.
That's a decent starting point.
But I'm guessing that's just a general idea. What other things should people be thinking about?
You're right, you got to personalize it. Think about any debts you have, like your mortgage, student loans, car payments, anything that would need to be paid off if you weren't around.
Right, those big expenses. What about things like college for your kids? Or if you help support your parents?
Absolutely, those count too. What kind of financial support will your family need down the road? Do you want to make sure your kids can go to college, help your spouse retire comfortably?
Right.
All that plays a role in how much coverage you need.
It really is a personal thing, isn't it? It's not just about plugging numbers into a calculator.
It's about your family, your goals. Life insurance isn't one size fits all. It's about creating a safety net that actually fits your life. So you've thought about debts, future expenses. What else is there?
Well, those are the big things. But what about everyday costs? Groceries, utilities, childcare? That stuff adds up too, right?
You're right. People forget about that sometimes. Think about it. Would your family be able to keep up with their normal expenses without your income? How long would they need support to get back on their feet?
And then there's funeral costs. I bet those can be a lot.
Funerals are expensive, easily tens of thousands of dollars. You want to make sure your loved ones aren't stuck with a huge bill on top of everything else.
So figuring out the right amount is like putting together a puzzle, all these different pieces.
That's a great way to put it. And don't forget about inflation. Things are going to cost more in the future.
Wow, so much to think about. You really have to look at the whole picture, don't you?
Exactly. What does your family need now? And what will they need down the road?
Okay, so let's say someone's gone through all that. Debts, future costs, everyday expenses. They've even thought about inflation. They have a number in mind. What's next?
Next, you got to be realistic. Can you afford the premiums for that much coverage? You want a policy that gives you peace of mind, but you don't want to be struggling to pay for it every month.
It's got to be something you can actually maintain, right?
Exactly. You don't want to overspend just to have a huge policy. It's about finding that balance. And speaking of finding the right fit, we should talk about those policy riders. Remember those? They can really make a difference.
Right, the riders. Those are the things that let you customize your policy, right?
Exactly, like adding extra features just for your situation. And they're usually not that expensive.
Remind me what kind of riders there are.
Well, one that's super helpful is called an accelerated death benefit rider. It lets you access some of the death benefit early if you get diagnosed with a terminal illness.
Oh, wow. That could be really helpful.
It can be a game changer. You get financial help while you're still alive, maybe to cover medical bills or just to, spend time with your family without worrying about money.
That's amazing. What other riders are there? Anything good for families with young kids?
There's the waiver of premium rider. I think every parent should know about this one. Basically, if you become disabled and can't work, it waives your premium payments.
So you're still covered even if you lose your income.
Exactly. Keeps
Yeah.
your family protected no matter what. And if you do have kids, you might want to look into a child rider. That adds coverage for your kids to your policy.
So it's like built-in protection for the whole family. That's great.
Exactly. And those are just a couple of examples. There are tons of riders out there. So talk to an insurance agent, see what makes sense for you.
This is making me realize life insurance can be a lot more than just a basic policy. You can really personalize it.
I'm glad you're seeing that. The more you know, the better choices you can make.
So we've covered a lot, figuring out your needs, choosing the right type, budgeting, even customizing with riders. What else should people keep in mind as they, start thinking about life insurance?
One thing I'd say is life insurance isn't just for certain people. It's for everyone, no matter your age, your income, whether you have kids or not.
That's about what matters to you, right?
Exactly. And when you understand how it works, you can take control of your future financially.
Mm.
It's about being proactive.
It's about taking charge, making a plan.
Exactly. And you know what's really hit home for me during this conversation? Life insurance, it's really about love. You're showing you care, that you're committed to the people you love.
That's a beautiful way to put it. You're making sure they're okay, even if you're not there.
Exactly. It's about leaving behind a legacy of, love and security.
This has been so eye-opening. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of life
I'm
insurance.
so glad to hear that. The more you know, the better. And hopefully our listeners are feeling ready to take that next step.
I bet they are. Now that we've covered all this, what questions do our listeners have? What else do they want to know about life insurance?
It really is. And as we wrap up, it's amazing how something that seemed so complicated at first can be broken down like this.
Right. I feel a lot more informed now, for sure. Hopefully our listeners do too. It really comes down to peace of mind, doesn't it? Knowing you're taking care of things.
It does. It's about knowing you've done everything you can to protect the people you love.
It's not just about the money, really, is it? It's about that sense of security, knowing that your family will be okay.
Yeah. They can focus on healing, on moving forward without that added stress.
And it's great how many options there are now. All those different writers and stuff. It's not like it used to be where everyone got the same thing.
Exactly. There's something out there for everyone, no matter what your situation is.
So as we finish up, what's the one thing you would tell someone who's thinking, okay, I need to look into life insurance? What's the first step?
Don't wait. Seriously, the sooner the better. The younger and healthier you are, the less it's going to cost.
That's good advice. And the more you know, the better, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to talk to an expert, a financial advisor, an insurance agent. They can help you figure it all out.
Find the right policy for you. All right, well, that's about it for today. Remember, it's never too early to start planning for the future. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into life insurance. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.